The New York Knicks, 50-32, finished with the second seed in the East. Personally, I don't feel like they actually deserve the second seed. They did play really well. Jalen Brunson had an MVP level season, top five at the very least. He should have been a top five vote and All NBA first team. Even especially after Randall went down, and that normally would derail their season. But I just don't think they would have gotten there if the other teams in the East were healthier, Milwaukee, Philly, etc. But anyway, they were the second seed in the East. They outplayed Philly in the first round of the playoffs. Joel Embiid was hurt and did dominate in stretches, although he choked at times. But the Knicks did win that series fair and square in 6 games, and then unfortunately injuries caught up to them, and they lost to the Indiana Pacers in 7 games in the second round. Series they actually did deserve to win, but that's in the past, and now we move on to this season. And in the offseason, they started with a bang with the Mikal Bridges trade. Traded a lot of draft picks to get him, but now you add this extra Villanova guy, and everyone thinks, oh yeah, it's going to be the Villanova Knicks. Then all of a sudden, Dante DiVincenzo becomes part of a much larger trade with Julius Randle for Karl Anthony Towns. So much to say about that trade. I guess I'll start off with the fact that Tom Thibodeau, who did an excellent job coaching last year, by the way, now has to coach Cat again. And although Tibbs has said all the right things since their breakup, it was not a smooth sailing in Minnesota when the two were together. And I worry about that sort of fit now. On top of that worry, there's also a few issues to come with this sort of trade. Yes, Cat is a great floor spacer, another offensive threat, a little bit better than Randall as an offensive threat, and especially the floor spacing is a big deal. But number one, it means you're all of a sudden starting Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns as two not good defensive players. Like they compete, but they're not good. That's number one. Number two, what does that mean for Mitchell Robinson? Yes, Mitchell Robinson gets hurt a lot, but are you going to play Cat at the four a lot of his minutes, or are you going to play him at the five? The Knicks are really thin at center, and part of that is because Jericho Sims is not ready and Mitchell Robinson gets hurt all the time. But if you play him a lot more at center, you can play other guys at the four, but I worry a little bit about the Knicks at the four because Josh Hart and OG Anunoby, the guys who would play a lot of those minutes, are a little bit small. OG is not like the smallest guy, but he's not like a big lanky four. He can guard fours, but I think they need like some size. Where Precious Achua certainly comes into that conversation, but as great as Precious was in spurts last year for the Knicks, how much can he really replicate that success this year? So that's another problem with the Cat trade. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but where else was I going? Yeah, other problems with this trade. Karl Anthony Towns is really, really expensive. He is about $60 million a year on a supermax deal, and that's on top of the fact that during the offseason, Jalen Brunson got a 4-year, $156.5 million contract. To be fair, it was a $113 million pay cut, which is nuts, but it's still a lot of money. And then on top of him, OG Anunoby gets a 5-year, $212.5 million contract. Bad contract, by the way. It felt kind of necessary since they traded meaningful assets to get him. But the guy has missed at least 15 games every season since the COVID seasons. He missed some games in the playoffs. He never stays healthy. As great as he is as a player, as a complimentary guy, he just never stays healthy. So between him and Jalen Brunson and Cat, that's a lot of money. Mikal's going to be probably opting out of his contract next season, and then you have to worry about paying him. This team is going to get very expensive if they don't win in the next year or two or three. And certainly, like it is a solid core. You talk about a starting five potentially of Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson. That's a pretty fearsome fivesome, and there will still be really good defense if Robinson, Anunoby, and Bridges are together. And then you have this like decent bench. It did get thinned out a little bit with trades, but Deuce McBride is a very good player. You have Jericho Sims, maybe, who knows? You have Precious Achua, solid player. You have Josh Hart off the bench. Like that's a solid team. That's like a reasonable amount of depth, but it will certainly get tested. Karl Anthony Towns misses a lot of games. OG misses a lot of games. And on the flip side, I should mention Mikal Bridges, who has never missed a game in his entire NBA career, is now playing for a coach who is infamous for running guys into the ground with excess minutes. I would not be shocked in the slightest if Mikal Bridges' Iron Man streak came to an end at some point this season. It feels untenable. given the way Tibbs likes to run starters into the ground, doesn't play a lot of his bench often. So that's something certainly to keep an eye out for. Other news and notes. Speaking of Mikal Bridges, he did not play particularly well last season, and one has to wonder if that was because of Olympic layover from the season before, or if it's just too many minutes, or if it's just because of all the losing that was happening in Brooklyn. It's hard to say, but he's now a third option on the Knicks, and that should be a good role for him. Sometimes he might be the fourth option if Anunoby pops off. A little rare, but possible. But, if he plays a third option, like, you're doing well if you're the Knicks. Jalen Brunson does what he does. Cat does what he does on offense. He's still a great player. And he's only 28, I believe. So, like, that you still got a pretty good ceiling with the two of them. And then Mikhail's a third guy. You've got, as I said, good pieces off the bench. I certainly think the Knicks can compete for a title, which is words I never thought I would be saying anytime in the near future. And yet they are certainly a title contender among the title contenders. I don't think they're gonna necessarily win the title. I also don't have them as the pick to make the finals, but anything's possible. To a second seed or a third seed is certainly the likely outcome. I don't think first seed is in reach, but top two or three seed definitely is where I see the Knicks. And as long as people stay healthy and as long as they play well the same way they did last year, who knows? Maybe we get the first Knick title since 1973.